President Lee Jae Myung's public approval rating makes international headlines as it maintains a tangible upward momentum. With more press perspective today. Hello and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Press Perspective for March 18th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Public polls show the president's policies have been winning him a tangible support base. For more on this, I have Celio Fioretti with French daily Croix here in the studio. Celio, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with us. Colin, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me in.
Celio, we shall start with you. So as I mentioned in the short clip, the foreign media has been highlighting President Lee Jae Myung's approval rating, which has been on the rise in recent days. How is the foreign media explaining this rise?
Well, they are explaining this rise in approval for President Lee Jae Myung through a mix of a strong policy delivery, also a broad-based support, but also a very distinct leadership style. First, on the data itself, his approval rating has climbed to 65%, which brings him back to his highest level since taking office last year. That upward trend is not only just a one-off boom, it's a larger trend over the couple of months in several weeks that really shows an increasing support for the president. Now, in terms of explanation, the most immediate answer is his delivery on policy, and especially on socio-economic policies, livelihood issue. That was really the core of his promises during the campaign and when taking office. And people tend to react quite positively to his policies. His handling of the economy and the real estate issue has been praised by a major party of the population. So again, this is very tangible delivery that really attracts people's support, but what also is particularly interesting, and the Diplomat last week had an article about that, is his very distinct leadership style. He's described as a new kind of president, as is for Korea, someone that is more pragmatic and prioritizes results over political rhetoric. And so he's praised for his administrative efficiency, but also the way he talks to people, the way he communicates. He's seen as someone more humble and close to the people, and I would say his use of social media, especially, he's been commenting on Facebook, on Twitter, X, a lot about his policy and answering people's questions. He's tweeting and posting a lot, which make people feel closer to him, and if there's more a sense of connection, which helps also to make him more popular. So the overall takeaway of this rise in popularity is not just the policy itself, which still plays a big role, but his approach as a president, how he communicates, how he takes the role of a president, that really is changing a lot.
Right. Colin, as Celio just mentioned, the Diplomat, it claims, and I quote, Lee Jae Myung is a new kind of president. This being said, how does his leadership style compare to that of his predecessors?
On that specific respect to being a new kind of president, or at least presenting himself as a new kind of president, that he has in common with, I think, several past presidents of the Republic of Korea. You know, for many of them, it's always year zero. The Republic starts now. Forget all those past presidents. Now is the real democracy, and so on and so forth. We've heard variations of this before. But his actions do reveal a different modus operandi, shall we say, than most South Korean presidents so far. Again, it's early to say, but he does have a high approval rating, as we've discussed, for this point in his presidency. And I think he's keenly aware of the records of the presidents that have come before him. I think he knows what I just said, that, you know, there's a lot of this talk about how, you know, we're starting fresh with me. He knows that. But he also knows that for most presidents of this country, they have big promises, they make big promises, and then the gas runs out of the tank pretty quick, or the air kind of drains out of the balloon, pick your metaphor. And so getting past that sort of rough patch, I think has been a priority for him. And one way has been to keep the promises he's made, to aggressively to aggressively fulfill or to do actions that are seen as fulfilling what the promises he's made. And so we can point to those and say, look, I've promised this and I'm giving you this. You know, I'm doing the job you elected me to do. And this is a practice he is seen as having honed in his previous political positions, including as the mayor of Seongnam, a city that is seen as having been turned around to a large degree by him, and then being the mayor of Gyeonggi province as well, that surrounds Seoul. So he has a pretty solid record in those two areas, and he's bringing this experience to the top job in Korea. And I think if you look at what he's done so far, there's a case to be made. He is more effective and perhaps more efficient, as Celio said, more pragmatic than other presidents, than his predecessors have been to this point in the job. But at the same time, many pitfalls lie ahead of him. You know, I myself during the election had some reservations about the criminal trials he still is involved in, and there were reasons to sort of have concerns, as there are for every candidate. But so far, so good, I would say, and I think we'll all be paying close attention to see if he can maintain this approval rating, because historically, there's not many instances of that. So I think he faces a stiff challenge, but the attitude he puts forth, he seems up to it so far. But I think, you know, like every Korean president, he has the crowd who want him to fail, and he has his supporters, and we'll see if he can keep the latter group larger than the former group.
Right. This being said, then, according to foreign media, Celio, what are some of the variables that look to perhaps challenge his current approval rating?
Well, indeed, there are several variables that could challenge that momentum of rising popularity. And first is the immediate economic risk, as the world is now embroiled in a war with an oil crisis. Prices are rising in Korea, and the economy is getting slow again. And there are risks that this could damage, even though it's a bit not really the fault of the president, and it's out of his scope of matter because he has no control of what's happening in Iran. But still, it could impact his popularity and the way he's handling those issues. For now, those policies such as the cap on oil prices, for example, has been quite positively taken by the public, but it's still the war is far from over and the crisis is far from over. And there's not only that, the war in Iran, but there's also some economic pressure, whether it's from the US or maybe even China. The world now is a bit more tricky to navigate. And the way he will maintain that balance and trying to find the best option for Korea will really determine how much he's perceived by the South Korean population. And second, there's also a political balance to have. He has brought support since the election, but he has managed to gather a crowd of both on the progressive side, but also on the more centrist voters. And he will have to find a balance between these two, because maybe during the mandate, the term, some voters maybe on the center will want something different. Maybe people on the more progressive side will want something different. And he will have to find, again, a room to talk to both electorates, find a way to contempt everyone. But that's a hard thing to do. Many presidents have tried that before and many failed. We'll see how we can handle that issue. And finally, there's a broader political environment, even inside his party. We have seen already some discussion, people inside the Democratic Party not always agreeing on the way he rules and the project, the vision he has. We'll see also how he can maintain a unity inside his own party to make his policies, to enforce them, basically, to make them voted in the assembly. And that's also, we'll see, is a test of time, and a term is long, it's a long term, and we will see how he can manage both a balance with the electorate and also inside his own party.
Right, especially keeping in mind that we have local elections slated for this coming June, of course. Colin, let's now move on to the entertainment front. K-pop Demon Hunters made history by winning 2 Academy Awards. Would you say that this achievement was widely anticipated?
In a word, yes. Yes, I would. K-pop Demon Hunters, which won Best Animated Feature and Best Original Song, at the Academy Awards. Also won a bunch of other awards in the shows leading up to the Oscars, shows seen as bellwethers or predictive of Oscar wins, and some of which we discussed here on this program. And so it was seen as the favorite for that reason. The other candidates did not win many awards, and the nominees, I mean, it was not a terrible slate, although Studio Ghibli didn't have a movie this year. Pixar had two, one of which was a sequel, the other of which was, I believe, their biggest flop in the history of the studio, so they weren't probably going for it. There were two French language movies that looked interesting but didn't have the Netflix or Pixar publicity machine behind them, so they didn't have as much of a chance. And this is something we should remember, that an Academy Award, winning an Academy Award, yes, it's about cinematic quality, but that's not a sufficient condition. Sometimes not even necessary. You've got to mobilize the movie. You've got to mobilize fans and supporters within the Academy. You've got to have people in Los Angeles getting the movie to voters, to Academy voters. There are many of them, and you know, it's telling when you reflect on the fact that only this year did a rule pass in the Academy that voters must watch all the nominees before they can vote. And it's not enforceable really anyway. There are measures, but it tells you that people were not necessarily voting because they'd watched all the nominees and were judging on quality objectively. You know, they'd heard good things, they'd felt good things. Maybe they think they're doing something for a good cause. And this has been a pronounced factor in the Academy Awards lately in the last few decades, that a film is not just winning by advancing the art of cinema, but it has to be seen as striking a blow for some kind of social justice, especially, it's the United States of America, especially racial. So think of winners like, Best Picture winners like Crash in 2005 or The Green Book in 2018, movies that are now forgotten, let's face it, but they were seen as being movies that were fighting for a good cause, championing a good social cause. And indeed, K-pop Demon Hunters, whatever its other methods, the co-director Maggie Kang, accepting the award, said, I believe, you know, this is for all Koreans everywhere. She said, we're sorry that it took so long for people who look like us to be on screen. And the discourse after that was amusing because I think she'd forgotten about a little movie called Parasite in 2018, which had nothing but Koreans on screen. Later, there was clarification. I meant animated films, although there are many Asian characters in the films that win Best Animated Feature. So maybe it was too hasty a remark, but that is always a factor in the Oscars. It's not just about the movie, but sort of what the movie is seen as fighting for. And K-pop Demon Hunters was well placed in all these respects.
Right. And beyond the Oscars, Celio, I believe Netflix has announced a sequel to K-pop Demon Hunters. What has been shared about this endeavor thus far?
Indeed, Netflix has announced, confirmed that the sequel to K-pop Demon Hunters is in development, and expectations are extremely high given the scale of the original success. First, this is not just a quick follow-up. The sequel is part of a long-term creative deal with co-director Maggie Kang and Chris Appelhans, who will continue to write and direct the movie. That suggests Netflix is investing in a full-fledged franchise, not just a one-off commercial success. In terms of what we know creatively, the team has made it clear they want to expand the universe rather than simply repeat the formula. The original film followed the K-pop trio, Huntrix, Rumi, Mira, and Zoe, balancing global sandstorm with secret demon hunting lives. And now the idea is to go deeper in that world with more storylines and possibly a broader cultural scope. So maybe we'll see it will expand maybe deeper into Korean culture, or maybe to expand to other regions in Asia. And music, of course, again will be central. The first film hit Golden, was a global phenomenon, and even reaching a #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and winning a Grammy also. And the creative team has hinted that exploring new musical style will be also a part of the development to showcase more facets of Korean music industry. So we might see maybe some older songs or new genre of Korean pop music. What's also striking is the scale of the original success. Over 480 million views, a major award, Oscars won also. And so the pressure is to deliver something as good. It's a hard thing to do. It's something also as meaningful as it was for not only Korean, but also a lot of other people really resonated well with that story. And we'll see if the team managed to double down and make something maybe as good or even bigger than it is, but that's promising.
Right. In the meantime, though, Colin, what lessons should the K-entertainment industry seek to take away from the global advances made by this American production, of course, K-pop Demon Hunters?
There are a few. One of the major ones, I think, is to quote again Maggie Kang, who said this is a victory, or this is for all Koreans everywhere. Well, I would hesitate to take it too much as a victory for Korea because, as I think you've said, this is an American production, K-pop Demon Hunters. And Maggie Kang herself, she's Canadian, I think. She was born here and then grew up in Canada. But most of the people who worked on this film are American. And it's a Hollywood production, a Hollywood studio. And the sensibility is thoroughly American to my mind. The songs are mostly in English. And so watching this, I think one sort of cautionary lesson the Korean entertainment industry could take is that the K sensibility in K-pop, in K-drama, Korean film, whatever it might be, is Korea doesn't have a lock on it. It can be replicated anywhere. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that as that sensibility is developed to appeal to a global audience. It turns out the rest of the globe can also do it in their own way. Not just in the US. I mean, there are K-pop groups which are not Korean. They're not Korean themselves, the members, they don't sing in Korean, but the aesthetic is obviously K-pop, and that's what it's tapping into, and K-pop fans go for it in a way as well. There are successes and failures, but as well, the sort of traits of Korean dramas can be exported. You've seen imitations of Korean drama made elsewhere. There was a Korean drama made in Nigeria. It was not a Korean drama literally, but it took all the tropes of Korean film and just replicated it there. So I think what people like about Korean pop culture is not necessarily producible only in Korea, to reiterate. So maybe we should bear this in mind. If you are sort of aggressively shaping your pop culture, the pop culture of one society, to appeal globally, then by definition, it's going to be something that can be replicated elsewhere. So it's possible to be too broadly appealing, and then Korea could lose the grip, lose the exclusivity on Korean pop culture, which is a strange thing to say, but I think we're seeing it happening already. And K-pop Demon Hunters is just the most vivid, successful example so far.
Right, it has definitely started social commentary to that end. Finally, Celio, let's touch upon an article by the South China Morning Post that asserts that AI adoption may address the economic fallout facing an aging East Asian population. Could you tell us a bit about the article and your takeaways?
Yeah, this article takes a rather nuanced, or almost cautiously optimistic view of a major structural challenge in East Asia, aging population and falling birth rate. And the core argument is that while demographics are clearly a drag on growth, with less people, less work, less money for the country, countries like China, South Korea, and Japan may be better positioned than expected to cope with that aging population, thanks to a rapid implementation of AI and robotics into their society. The article highlights that these economies already have a strong industry in that field, in robotics, in AI, in microchips, and for example, South Korea has the highest robot density in the world in the working population, with around 1,000 robots per 10,000 workers. So the idea is that this, as the workforce will shrink in the coming decades, robots and AI will be there to replace not the humans, but the humans that are not there anymore because of the falling birth rate. And that implementation of AI and robots could cushion the impact of the economic impact of the falling birth rate and the shrinking of the population. Or some experts think it could be even like 10% less strong of a loss of GDP, from like 16% to only 6% loss of GDP. But that's the key of the article also, is like AI is not the silver bullet. It will not solve on its own the demographic problem. It's just a fix, a temporary fix to cushion again this economic impact, but it will not make people have more kids. It will not maybe transform the society in a way that people will be more incentivized to make more kids and have a bigger family. So it's a good advantage for now, but the countries like China, Korea, and Japan should not rely only on AI and robots for their future of economy. Still, if this technology is here, it's gonna lessen the economic downgrade, but it will not stop it.
Right. Colin, how does AI adoption, do you suppose, look to affect South Korea's work environment?
Yes, a couple of years ago, I wrote in a book that Koreans have more of an optimistic view of the future than Americans. And I've been asked about that many times. Like, people don't quite buy it. And they ask what I mean by that. And I say, thinking about it, even while answering these questions, I realized it's about technology. It's about the attitude toward technology. And for a long time, Koreans have been sort of technophilic, more than that, pro-technology in an instinctive way, I would say. A new technology comes out, people are on it, almost uncritically in most cases. And maybe Americans are too wary of especially a technology like AI. Koreans are not. You know, you'll hear variations on this idea. AI is the future. People say it not as if they'd come to that conclusion themselves, but just, it's what people are saying. We all think it's the future, so let's get on it. And, you know, the result of that mindset is not always productive. One example, let me only name the AI textbook fiasco last year, which cost, I believe, in the end, something like the equivalent of $850 million to no result. I mean, to no result. Yeah, it caused only problems. And I think we'll see more versions of that in the immediate future, just plunging into the pool and realizing, wait, we can't swim in this. And in workplaces too, I think in many Korean companies, there's going to be a lot of, probably is right now, a lot of, we're going fully AI. We're going to AIify everything without really a solid plan and without necessarily a pressing need for it. And in many cases, I'm sure it'll have to be walked back, these AI plans. It's like, okay, well, that was bad, we'll try again, you know. And it's a different approach. So certainly in the US, there's going to be maybe too slow adoption of artificial intelligence in some sectors. Here, it'll almost certainly be too fast. And I think people are prepared for that in a sense psychologically. You've just got to go for it, let the chips fall where they may. But I think it will be disruptive and not necessarily only in the positive Silicon Valley sense. But, you know, I think people in many sort of tech sectors in Korea are in for a bit of a rough ride in the next few years as the management or the level above that gets a little too gung-ho, not wanting to fall behind. Another big concern in Korea, you don't want to fall behind, and just implements the technology, whatever technology comes down the pike. And AI especially, with the sort of sense that it can replace workers, I think a lot of it's not quite there. But that's not necessarily an issue for those who want to be on the vanguard as much as possible. So, you know, hold on to your hats, folks.
All right, a lot of trial and error in the future then. All right, Colin, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Celio, thank you very much for your insights. Right, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. As always, thank you for watching.